What's up, everybody? It's me, your favorite little boy in the whole wide world, Ren with 2 N's. Now, I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of video games that are too easy, that don't provide any challenge whatsoever, video games that hand you rewards simply for logging in, games that ship with barely any content, games that hold your hand from start to finish, as if you're my Nana who's prone to falling down and dying at any minute. Games that have more padding than my Nana's coffin. Which is why I love Enter the Gungeon. I've been wanting to make a video on this game for a really long time now, and with the recent Gungeons and Dragons update, I finally have a perfect opportunity to do so. I picked this game up on sale during Cyber Monday last year, and over the course of these past 8 months, Enter the Gungeon has slowly but surely crept its way into my heart. The more I play this, the more I think that Enter the Gungeon just might be a masterpiece. Now, in case you don't know, Enter the Gungeon is a roguelike, procedurally generated, dungeon crawling, twin-stick shooter. And if you ask me, it's easily the best roguelike on the market. And I'm going to try to prove that to you over the course of this video. And if by the time this video is over you disagree with me, let me know why down in the comments. But that's enough of that. I don't want to waste any more time, so let's jump right on in. I've put over 100 hours into this game. I've done literally everything that there is to do. And let me tell you, this bitch is loaded with content. Every time you log on, there's always something to work toward. Whether it's saving all the NPCs, constructing the bullet that can kill the past, grinding out Frifle's challenges, unlocking all 400 plus guns and items, opening up all the shortcuts, unlocking every single character, beating the game with all the characters by defeating each of their individual bosses, which all have their very own unique gameplay and story mechanics to differentiate themselves from the rest of the final encounters in the game. And that ain't even the half of it. There are game-altering modes that you can toggle on and off, like challenge mode, which is insanely difficult. It took me forever to finally beat it. That's one of the hardest things I've done in video games in recent memory, and beating that felt so damn good. There are 2 more modes that shake up the gameplay, but on top of that there are countless secrets to uncover, and every activity you complete rewards you with something worthwhile that'll help you out on a subsequent run. And each reward persists throughout each playthrough. So for example, after you kill each boss, they drop hegemony credits, which you can then use to purchase better loot, which gives the game a really nice sense of progression. It's a very similar model to another game called Rogue Legacy. When you die in Rogue Legacy, you can use all the gold that you earned during your run to upgrade your character, as well as purchase new and improved weapons. But the problem I had with Rogue Legacy was if you went to an area that you weren't leveled up enough to tackle, you would die nearly instantly, regardless of how good you were at the game. It doesn't take your skill as a player into account. So as a result, it takes a fair amount of grinding for you to comfortably complete the final zone. Whereas in Gungeon, if you're good at the game, you can beat the final boss with bad guns. Literal trash weapons, if you know what you're doing. But I put quite a bit of time into Rogue Legacy, maybe 15 hours or so. What eventually pushed me away from that game was the combat. It was really repetitive, it was too simplistic, it never felt satisfying to me. And I couldn't help but feel that I'd seen everything the game had to offer after just a couple of hours in terms of gameplay mechanics. But Enter the Gungeon, man, its combat system is excellent. Dodge Roll knocked it out of the park. With its easy to pick up but difficult to master mechanics, the game feels incredible. Everything is snappy and responsive. The shooting is satisfying. The way the enemies die feels good. The movement makes you feel capable and agile. The physics of objects flying off the tables makes the projectiles feel powerful, gives them weight, and the game sets you up to do badass stuff, like sliding on top of tables while shooting at enemies, rolling through enemy projectiles with perfect timing, or flipping tables over to block projectiles. And you're going to be blocking a lot of projectiles, since this game has over 90 different enemy types, all of which keep you on your toes, since they each have their own unique attack that you need to pay attention to, like these lead maidens, who can only take damage when they open up to shoot you. But on top of that, their projectiles don't disappear when they hit the wall. They readjust themselves to track you and launch at you a second time. Or these blobs that chase you, cubes that shoot up the entire room, other cubes that shoot up half the room, then suck them back in like a dog with its own vomit. Guys in red hoods that absorb your shots and launch them back at you, so you gotta time your attack right. Or there's this weird barrel thingy that tracks you and goes underneath you, forcing you to dodge it at the perfect time, all while sidestepping bullets and shooting at other enemy types. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You put a bunch of these enemies in one room, and boom, there's your 30 seconds of fun right there. And it's yet to get old for me. Each new encounter faces you with a series of snap decisions that you need to make correctly if you don't want to take damage. You need to assess the room and prioritize what you need to kill first, while also being mindful about what each enemy type does. It's a lot of fun, and the amount of enemy types would be enough on its own, but the game also has over 200 weapons and 200 items. And a lot of these weapons and items can either drastically change your playstyle or incentivize you to play the game in different ways. So the game never gets stale. Like this item right here called the metronome. What it does is it makes your weapon stronger with each and every kill you get with that weapon. And after a little while, you can do some pretty insane DPS with certain weapons if you plan it out right. But if you take any damage or swap weapons, it resets that weapon back to its default damage. So you have to play extra careful, as well as not pick up any new weapons, since picking something up counts as a weapon swap. Then there's the quad laser, which shoots an incredibly slow-moving square, but that square does some really good damage. So you gotta get real close to the enemies and time your shots perfectly, and that can be really dangerous. Or there's this baseball bat that can knock enemy projectiles back at them. And there's so many other weapons. We'd be here all day if I had to tell you about each and every gameplay altering weapon. And with the latest update, certain weapons and items can now combine with one another to give them additional abilities, enhancing that variety even further. But when you mix all those enemy types with all those unique guns and items, you get an endlessly replayable experience. And even with all those fancy toys, the game is still pretty challenging. And y'all know I love me a good challenge, which is why I picked up Crypt of the Necrodancer last year. I thought that game would be perfect for me since I was looking for something difficult, something that I could keep coming back to. And I also have a very deep affection for rhythm games, especially DDR. And don't get me wrong, Crypt of the Necrodancer is a game that I really enjoy a lot. I put a ton of time into it. I even beat it with multiple characters, and while that felt great, I couldn't help but fight the feeling that I'd hit a wall, a skill wall. I didn't feel like I was being rewarded for my time anymore, because after all the hours I pumped into that game, I still found it to be incredibly difficult. Too difficult, in fact. Which is something that you won't hear me complain about very often. But I wasn't much better at that game after 40 hours of playtime than I was after, say, 20 hours. And I didn't like that. I hate to admit it, but I think that game is too hard. Hitting that perfect balance of tough but fair is not an easy thing for any developer to do. Necrodancer went a little bit too far with its difficulty, but I think that Enter the Gungeon got it perfect. And it certainly isn't an easy game by any means. It's equal parts punishing and forgiving. If there's too many projectiles on screen, you can use a blank to clear them out. And the invulnerability frames on the dodge rolls are pretty generous as well. But even if you're having a bad run, the game gives you ample opportunity to succeed, because every death in the game is your fault. I've never died and felt cheated afterwards. Every time I died in the game was because I did something wrong. And I had to learn from each mistake I made. And as a result, I'd like to think that I've gotten pretty good at the game. There's no frustrating nonsense in Enter the Gungeon. If you do everything correctly, then you'll succeed. You won't get hosed like you would in Spelunky. Even when you do things correctly in that game, you get spelunked on. That game's piss poor garbage. But my point is, the more I played Gungeon, the better I got. And that's how it should be. I shouldn't have to rely on the luck of the draw to succeed. While the game does have a lot of RNG, your success isn't wholly reliant on getting lucky, unlike in The Binding of Isaac, which I honestly didn't play very much. I beat it once or twice, and I do think it's a good game made by a very competent developer, but I just couldn't get into it. I felt like that game was more reliant on RNG, more so than it was on raw skill. Now I could be wrong about all this since I played it for maybe 3 hours tops, but on my 10th or so run, I was lucky enough to get good loot that allowed me to just breeze through the game, meaning that at some point, just about anyone, casual or otherwise, can complete the game if they get lucky enough. And while that's good for some people, that's just not what I'm looking for. Enter the Gungeon requires skill. Even if you have great loot, there's still a pretty good chance that you might fail. It's very easy to get complacent with powerful gear and make a simple mistake. Sometimes one measly little slip-up can start the snowball that causes you to fail, and having that thought in the back of your mind at all times is absolutely thrilling. Then as you get better at the game, it gives you more rewards. Like you get an entire extra heart if you take 0 damage during a boss fight. Or for every difficult task you complete, you unlock something powerful. So if you ever pick up an overpowered item during a run that allows you to breeze through the game, it's because at some point, you had to earn that item. You don't just get the item handed to you like it's mommy's milk on a Sunday morning. It's nice and warm. Thanks, Mama. Mama, have you been eating pineapples? The point is, to get good gear, you gotta get good at the game. And I'll never forget this moment right here. I unlocked some gun called the makeshift cannon. Looks like it was made out of wood or bamboo or something. Appeared to have been thrown together really quickly, and it only had 1 bullet in it. It looked like a classic joke weapon, but the very first time I used it, my jaw hit the floor. Because after killing these bosses traditionally, multiple times over the course of 90 hours, I now had the ability to kill them in just 1 shot, which I didn't think was possible. That is unheard of. But if I had that item the very first time I booted up the game, I wouldn't have cared about it all that much. But I earned that moment. And as a result, it felt really special. It's a moment that I'll remember for years to come. It's everything video games are about. And as you can see, the game it has such a charming aesthetic to it, which is complete with a ton of deep lore to delve into, full of references that are clever and on point. There's some deep references in there too. You need to be familiar with the source material to understand what the game is referencing. It doesn't beat you over the head with its references or homages like A Way Out did. That game just threw references into it without evolving them or taking them into a new direction. It was no better than Disaster Movie or a Bollywood trash fest. But Enter the Gungeon is so tightly made. It was clearly designed with player convenience in mind. The fact that you can teleport to various spots within each dungeon saves you so much time, makes you efficient. All the money that drops into the room gets sucked into you once you kill all the enemies. There's even a mode that you can toggle, which allows you to move faster when you're out of combat, saving you even more time. It's truly a beautiful feature. You can tell that the people over at Dodgeroll really love video games through and through, and that they used their passion to create something special. This is as close to perfect that a video game can get. I've played over 100 hours of this, and the only real criticism I have towards this game is that the Frightful challenges are too tedious and grindy. But his challenges aren't even a side activity. They're just some miscellaneous thing that barely even qualify as optional. So there's really nothing to complain about. This game is a solid 10 out of 10. Over the past 8 months, this game has solidified itself as one of my all-time favorites. I come back to it week after week and I've yet to get bored. It's given me everything I want out of a video game. It appreciates my skill, it feels responsive and snappy, it challenges me, and most importantly, it keeps my mind off the fact that my 90-year-old Nana slipped, fell, and shattered her hip, which sent her to the hospital, where she did die. It wasn't until recently where my grandma told me that while Nana was at the hospital, she wouldn't stop calling for me. Nana wanted to see me one last time before she perished, but I simply wasn't there for her, and I have to live with that fact. I'm sorry, Nana. But Enter the Gungeon helps me forget about all that. Holy smokes, look at me go! Enter the Gungeon makes me realize that I barely even knew my Nana anyway. I only saw her a handful of times throughout my life. And besides, she only gave me $5 a year on my birthday. She was the worst patron of all time. Thank you, Enter the Gungeon. And no, Dodge Roll Games didn't sponsor this video, but I mean, that would have been nice if they did. So, as compensation, if it's not too much to ask, maybe, you know, throw a gun in the game referencing my channel. You know, maybe call it Ren's Repews. I don't know, I'm just spitballing. But if anybody else watching this right now can think of anything better, let me know down in the comments. And I'll pin my favorite one up at the top, and we'll see what happens. It's probably a long shot, but you never know. And this game is only 15 bucks. There's no microtransactions. It's more than worth the money, especially since they just implemented some DLC into the game. Free DLC, by the way. If you haven't picked this game up already, you absolutely should. But I guess I should probably warn you that I have encouraged several of my friends to play this game, but none of them played it for very long because they all claimed that it was too hard. This game might not have looked too tough throughout this video, but that's only because I'm hella pro and hella smoke at the game. I make it look easy. I didn't have any issue with its difficulty. I thought it was perfect, but you should know what you're getting into. And I would like to thank my patrons. All your guys' support means so much to me, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Everybody, put your hands together for the Patreon boys. First up, we got Brendan Attersley, Max Gunrail, Tyler Hollowpoint, Eric Cachet, Christian Raygun, Sluggy, Mathew Bogatz, TG Rifleman. Next up, we got Explodium. I Shot That. Sounds easy. Nick Bushmaster 15, Zach Semtex, Flip the Table, and lastly, we got Cody. Thank you guys so much for watching. You're all great beauties in my heart, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.